We begin today's broadcast with the news of yet another terror attack in Israel. A suspected car ramming attack took place at the Nir Tzvi intersection close to the city of Ramla when a driver crashed into a group of pedestrians at a bus stop, injuring 4, 2 seriously and 1 moderately. The attack was thwarted, according to security forces. There is still no confirmation of the death of Hamas military chief Mohammed Deif in yesterday's targeted airstrikes in Gaza. A senior Hamas official is denying that the Hamas second-in-command was harmed. The killing of the Khan Yunis brigade commander and many Hamas operatives were confirmed. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
Sources in Gaza say that at least 90 people were killed in the IDF strikes, and Arab media confirm the deaths of Khan Yunis brigade commander Rafa Salame and Hamas operatives when they were struck by large munitions in a Hamas gathering area of low buildings between the Al-Mawasi humanitarian zone and Khan Yunis. Deif, age 58, has long been one of the terror figures most wanted by Israel. He was an architect of Hamas's October 7th onslaught on Israel, when some 1,200 people were killed and about 250 others dragged into Gaza as hostages. The IDF said the building struck was not in a tent camp for displaced Palestinians, but rather in a fenced-off Hamas compound within a civilian environment. The IDF believes that Deif was at the site and could be buried under the rubble. The army also said that according to intelligence, before the attack, there were no Israeli hostages in the area.
מדינת ישראל, באמצעות צה"ל והשב"כ, תקפה היום בעזה במטרה לסכל את מוחמד דף ואת סגנו רפה סלאמה. עדיין אין ודאות מוחלטת שהשניים סוכלו, אבל אני רוצה להבטיח לכם שכך או כך אנחנו נגיע לכל צמרת החמאס.
A senior Hamas official denied that Deif was harmed. Elsewhere in Gaza, the IDF found weaponry in a Hamas complex inside a former UNRWA headquarters.
במהלך היממה האחרונה אנחנו בעצם מצאנו אתר רגיש של ארגון החמאס בתוך מבנה של האונר"א.
Earlier, airstrikes eliminated key Hamas commanders. They included Ayman Shweida, the deputy commander of the Hamas Shejia battalion. Also eliminated was Hussein Mansour, a senior official in Hamas's internal security forces and military wing. As the Prime Minister said, sooner or later, the IDF will get to all of the Hamas leadership responsible for October 7th.
Following the IDF strike over the weekend and potential elimination of Mohammed Deif, here to speak with us about the incident and Israel's overall war strategy is Colonel Mey Eisen, a senior fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. Colonel Eisen, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll start with the elephant in the room, Mohammed Deif. We've seen the IDF attempt to assassinate him before, unsuccessfully. Today, we saw Hamas officials deny that Deif was harmed at all. What's your take?
He's been the invisible man for so many years. He's been the one that you attack, and then you wonder, and then he lost an eye, and he lost an arm. So I don't know. And so what I'm asking myself is, would Hamas tell us if he is dead? Why would they not tell us? Because it keeps the aura that he's still alive. Why would they not tell us? Because they don't want his own people to understand that we can target and kill him. Do they have an interest in telling us that he's dead? I think not. So I think that we're going to stay in this limbo of not knowing. And what we're going to need to do is to gather hardcore information from our sources that will try to really say he is dead. I mean, he's barely spoken in the last 9 months. We heard his voice on October 7th and literally only once since.
Now, if Deif is indeed dead, as you mentioned, there isn't a whole lot of motivation for Hamas to tell us. What would the ramifications be for such an assassination within Hamas?
He is one of the main leaders, not just in the sense of being a figure, in that sense that he managed to evade his own death so many times. No, he's a figure because he's the one who plans. And I at least very much view the execution of what happened on October 7th, that detailed, horrific genocidal planning, very much Mohammed Deif and his Disappearing, his not being in the arena is a significant act, but that's at the leadership quality. That means of the Hamas's capability to do an October 7th attack. Let's be clear, the individual terrorist will still be inspired by his idea, by his actions over all the years, by the way he managed to evade it for so many years. So they'll continue to do individual attacks, but to do a coordinated October 7th type of attack, I think that very much goes with Mohammed Deif.
Now, whether or not he was assassinated in this strike, do you believe that this strike will have any impact on Hamas's willingness, or perhaps lack thereof, to make a hostage deal? I mean, we already saw that they're claiming they've paused negotiations. Is this a strategic mistake, these strikes that we see the last few days? Is it a strategic mistake on the part of Israel, or a necessary act to show strength against Hamas?
You put both of those on the table and there is no yes, no, correct, incorrect answer. At the end, it's about policy. I'm one of those who thinks that Hamas should be cornered. Hamas should never feel that they are the ones who are running the show, that they are the ones who define what happens in day-to-day life. There's no question whatsoever that an attack like that does impact perhaps their willingness to be in negotiations with us, but it's not like they wanted to be in negotiations with us in the months before. They haven't exactly been open about it. For them, hostages, these hostages, our families, our people, our children, our husbands, our fathers and mothers, these hostages for Hamas are only bargaining chips. So they'll blame anything on their lack of willingness to do any kind of exchange, because for Hamas, having them is worthwhile. Not only that, having them dead is worthwhile, not only alive. So I'm very, very wary of saying right now that because of this attack, it could in any way stop a kind of exchange. I want the exchange. We all need it, but I don't believe Hamas, and I think that you need to hound them as much as you can in the military sense so that they never feel safe.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for your insight. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today, but as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. Colonel retired Mey Eisen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In medieval times, blood libels ignited pogroms that shattered our people. And now echoes of these lies persist in new blood libels. On college campuses, online, in the media, and halls of power, Jewish communities are facing this haunting echo of history once again. That's why we must speak out and make our voices heard. Today, there is only one organization that truly brings together Jewish communities from more than 100 countries and effectively elevates the voices of young leaders standing on the front lines in this battle for our survival, the World Jewish Congress. Since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, American Friends of Sheba Medical Center has stepped up in an extraordinary way. They've raised more than $35 million, ensuring the victims of the massacre and the soldiers who are fighting for Israel continue to receive life-saving treatments and rehabilitation. American Friends of Sheba has arranged for more than 150 volunteers to travel to Israel, providing critical support to the nation's largest and most comprehensive medical center. Be a part of the Sheba. Stand for health. Stand for Israel. Donate now.
As Israel holds off on confirmation of the assassination of Hamas leader Mohammed Deif, there are many things you may not have heard about this elusive Hamas leader that has somewhat miraculously managed to avoid assassination attempts multiple times. Let's take a closer look at who exactly the number 2 in Hamas is and why he's such a critical target for the IDF in the fight against Hamas. Mohammed Deif, the commander of Hamas's military wing and the number 2 position in Hamas, has managed to survive 7 attempted assassinations by Israel. After yesterday, it's unclear if he survived an 8th attempt on his life. The IDF has not confirmed his death, and as of Sunday afternoon, a Hamas official claimed Deif was fine. Deif, who was born in Gaza, is largely credited for transforming the Al-Qassam brigades into a paramilitary force and developing the Hamas tunnel system. He was also one of the masterminds of the October 7th massacre, along with Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. From 1995 through today, Deif is on Israel's most wanted list for his involvement in planning and execution of numerous bus bombings in the 1990s and 2000s, as well as other terror attacks. He himself is responsible for the deaths of dozens of Israeli civilians targeted in suicide attacks in the 1990s. He has been involved with Hamas since the first Intifada in 1987 and holds a degree in science from the Islamic University in Gaza. From 2001 to 2021, Israel has attempted numerous times to eliminate the chief terrorist, but while he was severely injured twice, he's managed to survive. His continued ability to avoid Israeli forces has made him somewhat notorious in Palestinian society, and he has been in hiding for years, sometimes appearing in public only with a mask. While Israel previously believed he was severely crippled from attempted assassinations, rare photos shared more recently appear to show him relatively whole. More recently, the IDF has attempted to kill Deif in May 2021 during the war in Gaza and also in 2014. The confirmation of Deif's death would be a major blow to the radical terror group. Stunning news from the United States, where yesterday former President Trump was shot at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The former president was largely unharmed, but the entire nation is in shock from the political violence. Let's take a look at what happened yesterday. Americans are in shock after former U.S. President Trump was targeted in an assassination attempt at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday afternoon. While Trump survived, one attendee of the rally was killed and 2 others were injured. The shooter was also neutralized by security forces. In the footage, which was broadcast live, there's a barrage of gunfire before the former president is seen dropping to the ground with a bloody ear. Secret Service immediately jumped in to usher him off stage. Trump was seen pumping his fist to the crowd while being covered by the Secret Service en route to his vehicle. The Secret Service stated that the incident is an ongoing investigation, and former President Trump publicly thanked them and all law enforcement on social media for their professional and rapid response to the attack. Trump confirmed he was targeted and the bullet missed him by several inches, piercing the upper part of his ear. On Sunday morning, the FBI named Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, as the suspect, and sources involved in the investigation stated that an AR-style rifle was recovered from the scene where the shooter fired at the rally from an elevated position 150 yards away. Political leaders from left to right have condemned the violence, the likes of which have not been seen in America since the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. President Biden harshly condemned the attack, stating there's no place in America for this type of violence. In Israel, Foreign Minister Katz, as well as Prime Minister Netanyahu, have spoken out against political violence and the shocking assassination attempt. The investigation is ongoing, and more information is expected to be released in the coming days. Well, as the investigation into this attempted assassination of former President Trump intensifies, here to speak with us about the incident and its ramifications is former MK and former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Just to start, what is your take on this attempted assassination of Trump, and what are the ramifications in terms of political violence?
Good to be with you, especially, even on this very hard day. I've been working in Washington back and forth, working to deepen awareness about the situation in the northern part of the country. And one of the takeaways you come away from Washington is that you come back to a country, Israel, that is at war, but you feel like you've come from a country which is also at war, a different type of war. The level of political discourse, of violence in that discourse has been shocking. So the attempted assassination attempt was shocking, but it wasn't surprising. And one cannot spend some time in the United States without feeling the deep and bitter polarization between the right and the left, Democrats and Republicans, and the fact that this election, probably more than any other election in American history, certainly with modern memory, is perceived by both sides as an existential election. That if the people voting for Trump feel that he doesn't win, then that's the end of America, and the people who will be voting for President Biden or any other Democrat candidate feels that if the Democrats don't win, it's the end of America, certainly the end of American democracy. So the stakes are just super high here. And the level of discourse, again, is extremely violent. It's sort of hardwired into that discourse. So again, it was shocking, but not surprising. And I feel that we're just at the beginning of this episode, not even the middle, certainly not the end, and that already there are conspiracy theories flying around about how was it that a shooter was able to position himself on a building with a clear line of sight to the former president. How is it that people noticed the shooter, were trying to warn about this shooter, but the Secret Service didn't respond? That's going to cause a tremendous amount of instability or further instability in the American political system, these type of accusations will be floating around. I think the immediate takeaway would be, I think that President Trump having that presence of mind to give that sort of fist up salute and showing that he was still able to rally his crowd is going to redound to his benefit in the polls. He's already ahead in the polls, and I think that this, in terms, unless the Democrats can turn this around in a very radical way, President Trump will continue to expand his lead over the Democratic candidates. This, by the way, is not good for the state of Israel in any way.
Absolutely. Can you speak just a little bit about the impact of political assassinations, particularly with Israel? How do such historical events impact the policymaking?
Well, many years ago, I was an advisor to Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and his government when he was assassinated. And I know the long-term, profound ramifications that assassination had for this country. We were unaccustomed to political assassinations. Unfortunately, they are more common in the United States. We all remember, I'm old enough to remember President Kennedy's assassination, and people of my generation know exactly where they were when they heard about that. Indelibly marked in our memory. But then the assassination of his brother, Bobby Kennedy, in 1968, who was a leading candidate for the Democratic Party, assassinated by a Palestinian, Sirhan Sirhan, who is still alive today and still in prison. And his son, Robert Kennedy, is now a candidate for the presidency. He's the independent candidate. And by the way, I know him fairly well, and I know him to be a very pro-Israel figure. I don't know if it's because of Sirhan Sirhan, but he is very pro-Israel. So these are all connections that we have to this incident. And all we can say right now, as Israelis, first of all, to wish a rapid and complete recovery to former President Trump. We also wish a rapid and complete recovery to the people of the United States and to the American government generally, because that is not just a moral interest for the state of Israel, it's a strategic security interest for the state of Israel.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we are out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much for joining us, former MK and former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren.
Thank you, and have a good and quiet, safe day.
In a series of interviews, 27-year-old Russian immigrant Andrei Kozlov shared the harrowing details of his kidnapping by Hamas terrorists and his dramatic rescue by Israeli special forces. Speaking at a rally on Saturday night, Kozlov also called for the urgent release of the 116 captives still held in the Gaza Strip. ILTV's editor-in-chief, Mayan Hoffman, has more.
Andrei Kozlov, a 27-year-old Russian immigrant, recounted the story of his kidnapping by Hamas terrorists and subsequent rescue in a series of interviews over the weekend. He also spoke at a rally on Saturday night, calling for the release of the 116 captives still held in the Gaza Strip. Kozlov was rescued from Hamas captivity in Gaza on June 8th by Israeli special forces. He and two other Israelis, Almog Meir Zhan and Shlomo Ziv, were abducted from the Supernova Music Festival near Kibbutz Re'im during the October 7th attack. Kozlov initially mistook his kidnappers for rescuers, he said. During captivity, Kozlov faced physical and emotional abuse, and he feared both execution and Israeli airstrikes. Hostage conditions improved slightly over time, but abuse continued. Kozlov told the media that he and his fellow hostages endured psychological manipulation, including false claims that their families had abandoned them. Kozlov expressed deep gratitude for the Israeli soldiers, particularly Arnon Zmora, who died in the rescue operation. Upon his return, Kozlov's emotional reunion with his mother was captured in a widely viewed video in which he fell to his knees in tears. Kozlov regards his rescue date as a third birthday and reflects on his ordeal with mixed emotions, acknowledging the ongoing peril for those still held captive.
We must all fight for them, raise our voice, and get them out. Time is running out. Take it from me, every day matters, every minute, and even every second. The 8th of June was a moment of celebration in the last 9 months. A celebration of life, salvation, and pride for our country and our army, when a small country boldly, daringly, despite all the odds, goes and saves its people. This is what Israel is about. But this heroic operation couldn't bring all hostages back home. The only way to bring all of them is with the deal. It's time to bring them all back home now!
It is believed that 116 of the 251 hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th are still in Gaza, though not all are alive. Some 105 civilians were released during a week-long truce in late November, and 7 hostages have been rescued by the IDF.
Over the weekend, 4 IDF troops were wounded, one seriously by cross-border Hezbollah shelling from Lebanon. Multiple firefighting teams are also battling to contain brush fires caused by the Hezbollah barrages of rockets and drones. The Air Force hit Hezbollah sites in Lebanon and a Syrian air defense post outside Damascus. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
4 female soldiers were hurt by falling shrapnel during a rocket interception and were taken to hospital. The injuries came amid a barrage of some 15 rockets, most of which were shot down by Iron Dome. Several rocket impacts caused damage. 8 firefighting teams have been working to gain control of the brush fires started by the recent bombardments of Kiryat Shmona. IDF fighter jets struck Hezbollah positions in South Lebanon. The targets included a rocket launcher used in the attacks on Kiryat Shmona. Also hit were infrastructure in Atya Ashab and Kafar Kila and an observation post in Odessa. The Air Force also struck inside Syria, hitting the Kafar Susa area of Damascus. The attack followed the interception of 2 unmanned aerial aircraft that had been launched from Syrian territory toward Eilat early this morning. The IDF said it struck a Syrian military command center, military infrastructure sites, and targets of the Syrian Air Defense Unit. Official Syrian media reported 1 soldier was killed in the strike and 3 others were wounded.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the spirited and petite therapist who became a beloved cultural icon for her advocacy of safe, frequent, and creative sex, has died at 96 years old. She passed away on Friday at her home in Manhattan. Mayan Hoffman shares this report by Reuters.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the cheerful and diminutive therapist who became a cultural icon by promoting safe, frequent, and creative sex, has passed away at the age of 96. She died on Friday at her Manhattan home. Having escaped Nazi Germany as a child, Westheimer first encountered sex education at the age of 10 by secretly reading her parents' marriage manual. This early exposure sparked a career that brought her international acclaim through books, instructional videos, lectures, teaching positions, a radio show, numerous television appearances, a syndicated column, and even a good sex board game. Known affectionately as Dr. Ruth, the 4-foot, 7-inch woman with a distinctive German accent and an ever-present smile, advocated for the joys of good sex, emphasizing its safety and pleasure. She lost her virginity at 17 on a kibbutz in Israel, an experience she fondly recalls in her 2001 autobiography. Westheimer, a strong supporter of contraception, reflected on her own early disregard for birth control. She kept the identity of her first partner private, maintaining friendships both with him and his wife. Born from an unplanned pregnancy herself, her mother was a housekeeper for Westheimer's father's family in Frankfurt, Germany, when she became pregnant. The couple eventually married, and Carola Ruth Siegel was born on June 4, 1928. Throughout her career, Westheimer authored nearly 40 books, including Sex for Dummies, Dr. Ruth's Sex After 50, Heavenly Sex, Sexuality in the Jewish Tradition, Dr. Ruth's Encyclopedia of Sex, and Dr. Ruth's Top 10 Secrets for Great Sex.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies are expected alongside warm temperatures reaching highs of 25 degrees Celsius or 92 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.